Hello, everybody. Hello to all the wonderful people of the Young Adults Ministry. Welcome to the Yam Cam. I'm out of town. I'm actually not out of town yet, but I am now because it's Tuesday. That's right. I'm filming this on Monday, so it's a weird time space thing. I hope you're having a great time at group. I hope you're enjoying yourself. I hope you're meeting people. I hope people are being nice to one another. I hope you really enjoyed the time of worship and that you're excited for small groups the week after this. I'm so bummed I can't be there, especially if you're new. I'm so disappointed that I have to be out of town working this week. But hey, we'll see how the Yam Cam goes. We'll see if it's a success, and maybe this prototype will work even better down the road. So without further ado, open up to James chapter 3, verses 15 through 18. You'll see that's kind of an overlap with the sermon that we did 2 weeks ago that Sarah did. And I am going to focus on verses 13 through 18, but I want to read those initial verses, the verses before that, because I think they're very much connected. And I think what Sarah talked about 2 weeks ago is pretty much the bedrock of what we're going over tonight. So let's begin in verse 5. Read with me. So also, the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire! And the tongue is a fire, a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of life, and set on fire by hell. For every kind of beast and bird, of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come blessing and cursing. My brothers, these things ought not be so. Does a spring pour forth from the same opening both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Let me pray. Father, thank you for this passage. Thank you for how challenging and just beautiful it is. I pray that we would learn to practice what is said in your scripture. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. I want to start this by really saying sorry to Sarah Knapp, who gave this the message before this 2 weeks ago, because what she covered was vastly more difficult than what I get to do today. As I said, both passages, they fit together really well. And what I'm talking about today with wisdom from above, essentially, that's concluding what she said. So I get to kind of put the ribbon on this, so to speak, but she did the groundwork for it. We learned 2 weeks ago that our words have the capacity, not just that they're able to do that, but also the tendency, that's their natural bent, to wreak havoc on our world and wreak havoc on one another. And the context that Sarah gave us is that people in the church, they want to be leaders and not just become someone with authority, but someone who has a platform to teach and be heard, where you are commanding the attention of people who must hear you and listen to you and eventually imitate you. And for many, according to James, it's an attractive proposition to be in a position of influence. We want that. I certainly desire that, to have influence and to be listened to. But according to James, for most people, it's not a good idea. Not many of you should become teachers. Because the damage we do with our mouths, and the greater damage we may do if, with our loose mouths, we somehow get a bigger platform. It's dangerous. And it's a warning James gives us that should leave us very sobered, and frankly, it should humble us and quiet us, and then make us step back and listen and observe. We ought to ask the question of what sort of person does God want us to pay attention to? What sort of person does God want to influence us? And in learning that, we'll get to see what values are most near and most dear to God's heart, and not simply get the sense of who's supposed to be in charge of our church, but understand what type of person is really reflecting Jesus. What is the wise way of living? What is the Jesus way of living? And we find from James that the truly wise and godly way of living, it's not about words and power, but rather about peacemaking and gentleness. We understand from verse 13 that James is still talking about what people ought to be influencing us. Who around you is not just should be the official leader, but who around you is leading an exemplary life. He phrases it as this: who is wise and understanding among you? And he's going to roll out a very helpful and clear list that will help us identify the truly wise person, the person who's really walking with God. And hint, hint, as the message 2 weeks ago probably indicated, you don't identify that person through their words. Our culture may associate wise people with the people who speak well, but it's just not the New Testament understanding for a person who is spiritually mature. That's the problem that Paul had if you read 1 Corinthians 1. He's trying to teach this Corinthian church that he planted, but they're rebelling at him because they did not want to listen to him, because he didn't present in as eloquent as a way as they would have liked him to. They see this guy named Apollos as the end-all be-all example of someone who really is godly, and that's because Apollos speaks very well. He sounds good. He's persuasive. Maybe he's more attractive looking than Paul. And so Paul, just like we in our generation, was running into a culture that most valued the surface level expression of wisdom. The person whose persuasive speaking demonstrated not only that they knew stuff, but that they were rich enough to afford a formal education. So these people wanted the flash. They wanted the dynamic speaking, the pizzazz, and dare I say, they wanted the celebrity pastor. But for James, the only test of credibility that words provide is basically what you don't say, how you restrain your words. And the wise person is basically revealed in the absolute opposite way. Let's read. By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. We see the word works. That's the same Greek word we saw when we talked about faith versus works in chapter 2. And as I said then, you can think about it. Maybe it's not helpful to use the word works. Maybe it's more helpful to use the word actions. A person's actions. Deeds that reflect their belief. And as James said in chapter 2, deeds that complete their belief. They show that it's real. The faith sprouts legs. Otherwise, it's dead. It's just not a thing. But the works, the deeds, the actions, you actually see them in what James calls conduct. And conduct, I would say, is a more long-term, residual type of work. If works are action, then conduct is behavior. Conduct is a way of life. And a conduct is how people carry themselves over the course of time. And it's that good conduct that shows this work. And then how do those conduct and work look? What are they like? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. James says the good conduct and the works are based in, quote, the meekness of wisdom, or you could also say the humility of wisdom. And that's initially, for me personally, very strange to read, because for most of my life, wisdom or knowing stuff always produced pride in me. And I think, that's what we've been told, is like you know stuff and it puffs you up. And maybe that's the human understanding of wisdom. And unfortunately, I've spent most of my life sadly unaware of what true wisdom is. And according to James, I'm unaware of a certain type of wisdom, but I'm definitely aware of the wrong kind of wisdom. There's two types of wisdom. One is earthly, and it's unspiritual. You could translate unspiritual as it's animal. So it's kind of following the instincts, these very base instincts, and it's kind of following this pattern that you would expect. This pattern that has jealousy and selfish ambition. And I would translate selfish ambition as self-interest, which is where you get that sense of the animal nature. You're out to preserve yourself. You're out to preserve yourself and your genes. It's maybe naturally, it's in our most basic instinct to look after our own lives, our own comfort, our own safety first and foremost. So maybe that's normal. Maybe that's the natural way that things are, but according to James, not good. It shouldn't be allowed to carry on in our lives because it's actually demonic. But true wisdom is from above. Not only does it convey a sense of otherworldliness, that it's from God, that it's coming from a heavenly dimension that's different from us, but it also conveys a sense of timelessness. There are other places where this phrase is used in the New Testament where you could translate it as from the first or from the beginning. And certainly that sort of wisdom, the way that's phrased, it's invoking Genesis 1, isn't it? Where God, with his words, brought order to creation. So this type of heavenly wisdom, the wisdom from above, it brings order, as opposed to the earthly wisdom, which, while acting in self-interest, it leads to jealousy, which leads to disorder, disunity, conflict. And we saw in 2 weeks ago what that does, the destruction that wreaks through, in particular, poisonous speech. We saw that in chapter 3, and it's demonic. It's devilish. It's devilly. It reminds me of what James said in chapter 2, that, when we're talking about faith, hey, even demons have faith. Demons believe that God is one. They know stuff about God. They have plenty of knowledge about him, but they are trembling. They are terrified because of that knowledge, because their knowledge doesn't lead them to submit their lives to God. So they've got it coming for them. And in the same way, the self-interested earthly wisdom only puffs us up. I'm going to say what I've been saying almost every sermon I've done for the past 3 months, and that is, our knowledge of God only matters insofar as it transforms our posture towards him and towards other. It only matters insofar as it transforms our posture, transforms what we do, how we actually relate to God, how we actually relate to others. Otherwise, we're doing the same as the demons. We're doing the same as an animal, acting out of self-interest, puffing ourselves up. But we've seen what we don't want to be. Let's see what we ought to be. What does it look like to have the wisdom from above? let's run through it in order. And I'm going to kind of take this piece by piece and run through these words in a way that's hopefully clear and getting the thrust of what James is saying in kind of the fullness of James's language. First, the wisdom from above is first pure. So when we use the word pure or purity, let's kind of move on from how we've traditionally understood that word. I want you to forget about the way evangelicals will talk about purity, where you might think they're talking about traditionally this idea of an unblemished sexual record, so sexual purity, virginity, like nothing, you haven't blemished yourself yet, or having a squeaky clean morality. So it's kind of, you aren't listening to the bad music, the bad media, you aren't consuming the bad stuff. And Paul would say, whatever, Paul would say that's good, but you're behaving in an earthly way if all you're saying is don't touch, don't handle. Paul says that in one of his letters. What purity is about is a wholehearted and singular focus on God and the things of God and God's nature. Let's go to Philippians 4, verses 8 through 9. This is a verse I'm sure you've heard quite often. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. And taking that from Philippians, note how what Paul says about purity, the pure in heart, is so similar to what Jesus says in Matthew when he's talking about the reward for being pure. Matthew 5:8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. The God of peace will be with you. You will see God. The people who should be influencing you are the ones who pursue purity. Because they do that in order that they can better reflect God into your life. So that God's love for the most vulnerable and for the lost will seep into their own mindset and hopefully, as they have a position of authority and influence, seep into your life, my life, all of our lives. And that's why James says it must begin here. It is first off pure. Okay, what's next? Then peaceable. So the peaceable person, it's not just someone who's at peace. The peaceable person gravitates toward peace. It's a magnet for them. They're trending in that direction because that's what they want. It doesn't mean there's never conflict in this person's life. It doesn't mean there's never hard times. But the goal for them is to put out fires, not to start them. Once again, James borrows very heavily from the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. And we're going to get into this peacefulness, this peaceableness more, because it's a constant theme throughout this passage. The next word, they should be gentle. And this word is a lot like what it sounds like. Other books of the New Testament, they refer to it in contrast to a person who's brawling. They're getting into fights. They're always looking to start something. But the gentle person goes at conflict in a different way. Again, it doesn't mean there isn't conflict in this person's life, but they go at it in a very different way. The other translations might put it as moderate, forbearing, and one that's really cool, equitable. Let me explain why I say equitable could mean the same thing as gentle. One translation defines gentle as a person who understands justice beyond ordinary justice. So if the gentle person is interacting with a disgruntled and perhaps sinful person, a person who's transgressing against them, the person who's gentle isn't just going to try to make sure that disgruntled person is doing the right things, that person is adhering to the law, so to speak, the letter of the law. But this gentle person is going to work to put this disgruntled person on the path to the Spirit of the law, so that the person is not just made to finally obey things in a hard-hearted way, but for them to understand what the law is about, what following Jesus is about, rather than just obeying a leader to kind of appease them. The gentle person doesn't just want peace, but wants to guide other people to peace. And that's where gentleness comes into play. It's the process of getting there. Next word, open to reason. This one I would say is a lot different from what you might think it is. Because we see reason and we think reason, logic, the ability to reason your way. And James is not saying that the person who's open to reason is the person who's most logical. This is not about logic. This is not, that's not the Greek meaning. The Greek meaning of open to reason isn't that you're a kind of person who's like, hey, I would love to have a Socratic discussion with you. Let's get on the same level. Let's talk reason. Let's make syllogisms. Let's debate our premises. And let's kind of figure out who's making the most sense and go with that. This is not about being the person who reasons their way out of conflict, the person who engages with people on the most intellectual level. It's very different and very profound, in my opinion. A better English translation is yielding. You're open to reason, yes, but you're more so open to being reasoned with. You're willing to give someone a fair shake, hear them out, put yourself in their shoes. And even if that means the other person is going to take that logical warrior route and just steamroll you in what they believe is an argument. Because for us, it's not supposed to be an argument. We are called as Christians to relinquish our rights when we are in verbal conflict with another person, saying, hey, let me hear you out. What is it that you're saying before I'm jumping to conclusions about that? I am open to reason with you. I want to hear what you're saying. I want to hear what you're thinking. Next, full of mercy. And this is the same word used when Jesus talked in Matthew 9. We went over this in a sermon a long time ago. When Jesus said, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And that stems from the prophets. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Meaning that true worship of God is not just to express praise for him with your mouth, with your words, with your music, but rather more so to imitate with your actions, to imitate, to embody the kindness, compassion, and mercy that God has extended to us in our weakness and sin. We hear it over and over again in the Bible. Be merciful as I am merciful. God will show mercy to those who are merciful. These are the people who are embodying what God is like. So find those people, observe those people, imitate those people, because they are showing mercy as God shows mercy. Next one, and good fruits. And this one, I think we've been trained really well in Sunday school to understand. Galatians 5 does a really good job of explaining that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. So, something to memorize if you haven't memorized. And sorry for adding all those extra attributes on there for you, but those are clear. You're producing fruit. You're seeing what a person believes reflected in their actions, in their peace, their patience, their kindness, their gentleness, their self-control. It's something you just see. You don't need a law for it. You just see it. You know about it. You know a person is that way because the fruits of the Spirit are bearing forth. Now, the final two attributes are a little bit different because whereas the first 6 were about what you should have, what you should be, the last 2 are actually what you should not have and should not be. There's the Greek prefix a attached to both of them. So if I might say atheist, it means someone who's does not believe in God, right? So these words are like that. They have that same prefix. And James lumps them together because James writes in a very poetic, stylistic way. He's a great writer. So the last two, the first one is impartial. So let's best translate that as without partiality. And this is very similar to the person who's open to reason. The New Testament contrasts the impartial person against the person who is quick to doubt something or quick to take issue with something that's said. The impartial person removes herself and says, you know what? I don't have to get into this. I don't have to make a battle about this because it's not personal. It may feel personal, but it's not personal. And so I'm going to take a step back. Because even though I may feel initially, my knee-jerk reaction may be that the person is directly insulting me. The knee-jerk reaction may be that the person is going against my very worldview, my very way of being. But you know what? I'll step back. That's an animalistic way of treating people. This is not about me. The next word, sincere. Best translated as without hypocrisy. Paul says that elsewhere in the Bible. Let love be without hypocrisy. Meaning, you're not faking it. You're not loving someone just to appear that you care about it, just to appease people and kind of have that facade of being a good Christian. And this is a challenging one for me because it may seem that James is telling us to go against our feelings and just kind of go mind over matter when that's really stinking hard. And if that's the case, well, okay, let's go to work on that because I struggle with that too. One thing we can do to apply ourselves is to spend some time in this passage, additional time. It has had a tremendous impact on me because it is so beautiful. Seeing what Jesus is like as reflected in our leaders is really beautiful. James is laying out what's Jesus like and how can we be like that. Get this picture of what Jesus is all about, and I think that's going to transform your feelings. It's going to transform your motivations, your priorities, your admiration. I highly recommend just to stew on some of these words that James says even further. And I think your perspective and your feelings might actually change. And there are people, I admit, who will make life really difficult for you. Make really difficult for me, for all of us. Those people are there, and you don't have to pretend that it's easy. That's what James is inviting us to do when he tells us to love sincerely and to act without hypocrisy. You don't have to fake it. And he would rather you be honest about where you are with another person than fake it, than pretend. And now, this doesn't mean you ultimately cave to your feelings of animosity and you just stay there in this negative view towards others, but you're not supposed to suppress them. Be who you are and be open to change. It's a challenge to be really honest about who you are and how you feel and go from there. Go from there to live peaceably, gently, reasonably, full of fruit. So take that honesty and let that be a refresher. And from there, go on to be challenged. Go on to be challenged. It's not just about how you feel. Because, I have a lot of bad feelings, and I don't want to stay there. We want to finish with what James said, which I think is really subversive and really nuanced and really cool. And it might be offensive to you. And that is what's even more fun, because I can talk about this because I'm miles away in Florida, and if you're offended, well, you'll just get offended at someone who's leading the discussion. So sorry to those guys. James says, "And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace." It's delightfully nuanced. It's a great way to close it out, because who among us doesn't like peace? We all like peace. Even people who fight wars do it because they want peace. Hopefully no one, actually wants war. Hopefully no one actually wants to have these fires to have to take out. They want this stuff to go away. They want violence to cease, hopefully. I don't think anyone wants conflict. I hope they don't. And if I'm wrong, then I need to, I'm naive. But for James, it's not just about the end goal of having peace. It's not just about getting to that point of, all right, hostility has ceased. We're no longer trying to punch each other. For James, it's just as much about the process of peace as it is about the peace itself. And how does he say it? A harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. See the adverb there? The adverb there is in peace. So you make peace in peace, with peace. I want to direct you to this slide here because I think it could be a kind of a humorous illustration. Who knows what this is? Yes, it's a gun. It's a revolver, yes. But more specifically, what's it called? No, that's not correct. I'm just guessing that you guessed it wrong, but maybe one of you did guess it right. It is a Colt single-action army. It's a revolver that was used in several wars in the 19th and early 20th century, and they called it the gun that won the West. But the more humorous nickname for it is this, the Peacemaker. There's a revolver out there that is called the Peacemaker, and it's a weapon. Do you see where I'm going with this? Do you see where the writer is going with this? Yeah, we're called to be peaceable, but anyone can make peace. Anyone can win a war and have an armistice signed. That's happened countless times throughout history, that a war has ended. But anyone can win an argument. Anyone can shut down another person. Anyone can say, I win. Now we're at peace because I have triumphed over you. But for Christians, of course we want hostility to end. Of course we want peace. But we're supposed to do it in a very different way. In the Jesus way. Not through violence. Not through threats. Not through coercion, not through power moves, not through, hey, I've been to seminary and I have this moral authority of you and I'm older than you and I'm more married than you are and so therefore I can tell you what to do and coerce you into being the person that I want you to be. None of those things. Those are the path of violence. Even if people aren't openly being physically violent, that is a violent way to lead, a violent way to influence others. We are to make peace in peace, and that is the Jesus way. In Luke 23, the 12 disciples, they get into this argument over who is the best, who's going to sit at Jesus' right and left-hand side. And he finds out about that, and he gives them a talking to. Says, that's not the way we do it, guys. In Luke 23:24, it says, a dispute also arose among them as to which of them was to be regarded as the greatest. And he, Jesus, said to them, the kings of the Gentiles exercise lordship over them, and those in authority over them are called benefactors. But not so with you. Rather, let the greatest among you become as the youngest, and the leader as one who serves. For who is the greater, one who reclines at table, or one who serves? Is not the one who reclines at table the one? But I am among you as the one who serves. Whoa, think about that passage, guys. Think about what that last phrase says. I am among you as the one who serves. Remember a few weeks ago we were talking about Jesus is with the poor and downtrodden. If you really want to encounter Jesus, encounter those downtrodden. Well, also, if you want to encounter Jesus, encounter the people who are pouring themselves out. That's in Luke 23. In Luke 24, Jesus goes to the cross. He lays down his life, and he invites us to do just what he did. And it's revolutionary. And people outside of this teaching are going to laugh at us. It's ridiculous. You guys are pincushions. You guys are just letting yourselves get walked all over. How can you expect to lead? We're on a revolution, people. This is countercultural. And can you imagine what an unbelievable place our churches will be if this peaceable, gentle, self-giving leadership is our first point of emphasis? Anyway, guys, I hope that was helpful for you. I want you to apply this in a couple of ways. One, think about just those attributes of wisdom James is talking about. What does it look like for those to be applied to your life? Second off, I think it's good for us to develop a culture where we recognize those people who lead by serving. So to kind of take inventory of those people in your life who are doing that. Sarah's going to number you off into discussion groups, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. Questions to answer. One, talk about how the world would value a leader, who the world would say is living an exemplary life. 2, talk about which of these attributes surprised you the most or stood out to you, and which were the most challenging. And 3rd, think about someone in your life whose actions have spoken louder than words. Who is a person who's shown wisdom from above to you? Okay, those are your discussion groups. Go break off. Have a great night, everybody. Hope you go to Coffee Rush or something and have a great time and are excellent to one another. I gotta hop on a flight. See ya.